Welcome to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where we feature top leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry with your host, Drew Hendricks. Now, let's get started with the show.
Drew Thomas Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry. Today's episode is sponsored by Barrels Ahead. At Barrels Ahead, we work with you to implement a one-of-a-kind marketing strategy, one that highlights your authenticity, tells your story, and connects you with your ideal customers. In short, we help wineries and craft beverage producers unlock their story to unleash their revenue. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. Today, I'm super excited to talk with Alex Andrawes. Alex is the founder of Personal Wine. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you for having me, Drew. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for being on. So, Alex, let's start right from the beginning. How did you get into the wine industry, and why Personal Wine?
Well, I've been a wine enthusiast since I was 7 years old. I was raised at a table where my mom had wine, shipped to our home, and while we lived in North Africa. Yeah, we lived in. My dad was in the oil and gas business, and we lived in Tunisia. And they didn't make really good wine. I don't even think they made wine in Tunisia at that time. Although at one point in time, Algeria next door had more grapes under vine for making wine than entire Europe combined in the 1800s. But when we lived there in the 80s, there was no wine. So my mom had wine.
Is it legal there? I mean, I was always under the impression that you kind of had to be in special places to drink wine.
Oh, no. So that you're thinking probably of like Saudi Arabia.
Oh, okay,
more of the UAE area where, more tight Islamic control and prohibition of alcohol. But in Tunisia and North Africa, it's a very liberal Islamic country, and a lot of French people there, a lot of Spaniards, Germans. There was a tight wine community. We had wine brought in as a kid. My mom would make great meals, and she would say, try this wine with this meal. And so as a young man, I was very interested in that. And then we would go dig for ancient Roman artifacts and Roman, Byzantine, Phoenician artifacts. And some of those artifacts were ancient Roman wine vessels. These are, jugs. And I started to so I really became fascinated with the history of wine from that perspective. And then I went, we left North Africa, came to Houston, finished high school in Houston, went to the University of Texas at Austin. And I used to go to the Hill Country with one of my fraternity brothers, and we would stop at the vineyards in Fredericksburg.
Oh, yeah.
And we would just randomly go to wineries, and it just kind of clicked. We fell in love with wine again. And while all the other frat boys were out there having keg parties, we were having wine parties, and
cool.
We became kind of popular for that. But and so I became really fascinated with wine. And then my senior year, I was torn between going into banking, and one of my same fraternity brother was like, "Let's start a personalized wine company." And it was the beginning of .com, and nobody was really doing it online. So we decided.
This is back in 2000.
Yeah, it's actually 99. So in 99, we started the company, but we didn't get it licensed until 2000. And so that was one piece of it. And the other piece was I was working at an investment banking company. One of the brokers came up to me and said, "Hey, I want you to go to Costco and buy 10 cases of wine that we're going to give as gifts." And I was like, and then he said, "Well, and then you got to go to this store to go get the cards." And I was like, "Well, why don't we just remove the label off the bottle of wine and make the label the card and just give him the bottle of wine?" He was like, "That's brilliant. Do it." So I started to put all the pieces together. And other brokers asked me to do it. And then other people at other brokerage houses asked me to do it. And then, it turned into a business from there. And I didn't really want to be a banker, and so it just took over, and it became a business, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing from there. So
started off with the personalized wine and gifts. Now, at the time, I remember I ran a print company just shortly after that in the early 2000s. I mean, How has the personalization evolved over the last 20 years? I kind of have an idea, but increased digitalization, increased ability to etch, I know has gotten a lot better.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, a lot of that has to do, so all of the software we have in running our back end is all custom. We made it all.
Wow.
And it took a lot of iterations to get there. There are some off the shelf things you could use, but we found them to be relatively inadequate for what we were doing because, when people want something customized, many times they don't finish the order right there online. They just get it to a kind of a good point, and then they'll call in and say, something's not looking right. And then we basically go in and tweak it and make it look even better. And then we started using like machine learning and really understanding, what human errors look like. Wow. So we started kind of like automating things to make them even easier for people to use and get to the end result. Because you really, in the normal .com e-com world, you have maybe 2 or 3 minutes because most people they're on mobile, right? Mm-hmm. So in the mass customization world, you're lucky if you have 7 to 10 minutes to get to an order. So our goal was always to build something that a less than tech savvy person could be able to use and make it just, simple, stupid, easy, to use. Keep it simple. Stupid is kind of like that old saying, right? We wanted to make it so easy to use that, somebody with almost no computer experience could be able to use it. So we just basically started looking at ways people were making mistakes, how people design stuff, and just kept making iterative improvements.
What's the biggest mistake that you had to solve or find a solution for to streamline it?
The biggest mistake that we can easily solve for is just people adding elements that they don't really want to add. The other mistakes are going to be people making mistakes in spelling, like Mary versus Mary. So like Mary, Merry, versus Mary, Marry. Like, will you marry me? And if you think about it, like, what if the person's name is Mary with an Merry, right? And so other things would be just like, there's obviously rules. You can't threaten somebody on a bottle. You can't put nudity on a bottle. And there are certain things like that you have to be careful about. Unauthorized use of trademarks. These are things that we vigilantly watch out for.
You can't put your favorite football team on the bottle.
Nope. Football logos are off limits. Those are trademarked and licensed and what have you. So it's for us, it's just simply mostly like spelling and positioning, making things look beautiful, because the easiest customer to sell to is the customer that's already ordered from you before. Sure. And all it takes is one time for them to go, less than stellar, and never buy from you again. So our goal is to take the existing customer and make them evangelists of our product.
Oh yeah. Talking about your existing customers, is your customer base largely corporate clients for gifts, or who's your target audience?
Well, our target audience is everybody, but everybody over the age of 21. But we do have a core demographic, and the majority of our business is corporate business, which is, we're thankful for. But I mean, we have people order one bottle for a retirement party, one bottle for, will you marry me, one bottle for, and we believe that people that order one bottle are, we treat them the same way as people that would buy, 1,000 bottles. We treat them well, because you never know what they're going to buy for next, right? So they all work somewhere, and we want them to take the product with them everywhere they go, and and talk about the experience, the unique experience, and bring it with them. So, we win on speed and we win on service.
Well, those are two very big ones. I mean, in the one-off bottle, most of the time, corporate customers, they might just do a test order of 1 or 2, and you don't know that they've got a 20-case order waiting in the wings.
Yeah, and you never know. And there are challenges with ordering alcohol online, obviously shipping.
Yeah, in the starting days, how did you handle the fulfillment of that, and how has that changed?
Well, we've always done our own fulfillment. always. We tried to outsource fulfillment. Actually, sorry, we've always done our own fulfillment, but there was a time when we actually did fulfillment where we had somebody there off site, and it was very difficult to control because it's not just about the wine, putting a label on a bottle of wine. There's the environment, like if people are working around you and you need a natural flow for your business. Our business is fairly large in terms of footprint. We have it designed and engineered to flow in a very specific way so that, you can go in and place an order, and then that order, it's designed to hit the most minimal amount of people, because the more people that it hits, the more mistakes can be made. And our goal is we have a very specific formula for mistakes. Mistakes is actually a KPI that we have internally that we measure, that one person's responsible for. So we want to make sure, there are mistakes that we can't control that are going to be FedEx, UPS related. There's obviously the weather, which is a huge factor. Wine cooks in summer, no surprise. So we have to do things. We have to change our processes at least 2 or 3 times a year to account for that.
Oh yeah. No, I love the KPIs it's so many businesses don't really go to that level. They have a gut instinct. So you've got everything dialed down to the exact point of the operations with tracking it. When someone places an order, how many different departments does it go through from entry to exit?
At most 3, usually 2.
And it's from just kind of giving our listeners an idea for your operations, because you've got it seems like a very tremendously streamlined machine going on here that you refined over the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's taken, especially because I didn't really have experience in business. You get out of college, you don't really, you didn't go work at a factory like Motorola, Sunmark, or Continental Tire, or any one of these companies where, you take 5 things, you assemble them into one thing, and it's like, and you have robots and machines like Tesla, who just moved into Austin, which is where we're based out of. So a lot of it was learning, school of hard knocks, making very expensive mistakes, even just making expensive mistakes on buying the wrong wine, So, and the goal of business is really just never to make the same mistake twice.
Yes.
If you make the same mistake twice, it's your fault. And, and you have to be very careful, because some of those mistakes can be very, very expensive. And our employees make mistakes every once in a while. And, we track those mistakes. We don't fire people for making mistakes. We don't penalize people as long as their heads on straight while they're in the 4 walls. We don't want people on their cell phones all the time. They can't be on their cell phones doing work, because if they're doing that, then they're losing focus of a customized product. And then that's where mistakes happen. So we basically give, we make people take breaks, and, we buy lunches, and, we compensate people well. We provide benefits. We don't have our turnover is very, very low. Our headcount is low for the size of the business that we are. And just
what is your head count, or roughly?
It's less than 20.
Okay. That's a streamlined operation.
Yeah. It goes up during the season. Obviously we bring in seasonal work, and then at the end of the season, we'll try to pick, the top 10, 15%, 20% of the people that came in, and we'll bring them in full time.
Oh, sure.
So, it's seasonal to full time. And then, but our turnover is pretty low. So, we have a process of bringing them in, hiring them, how we hire them, a very meticulous process of doing that. We have a very meticulous process of how we onboard products, of how we buy them, how
do you go about finding the different products to feature on your site?
Well, some of them we have to hunt down, and some of them we have to, are presented to us. We've been, we've been in business long enough now to where, people know who we are, and winemakers in Napa, Sonoma, et cetera, they'll refer us a new, wine producer, because it's a very small, it's a multi-billion, it's billions and billions. It's like, I think 40 to $60 billion industry.
Wow. That's of the personalization or gift personalization or wine?
Direct to consumer.
Okay.
Direct to consumer is like, call it 5 to 10 billion. And growing rapidly, obviously, because of COVID, because, for a while people couldn't go to stores, people had everything delivered. So COVID just really put the afterburners on direct to consumer businesses. And, wineries started to figure out that, to engage their clients, what do you do? Because they can't come to your winery tasting room. You do Zoom happy hours, and, you have wine clubs where people get together, and winemaker goes and talks to 50 people at a time and goes to the next 50 people. And it's a whole lot better than bringing 5 people in at a time.
Oh, sure. Now, did you do some of these virtual tasting?
I've done a few of them. It's not necessarily our core specialty. But I have done them. They're a whole lot of fun. To me, it's not the same thing as being in person. I like meeting new people, shaking hands. There's just something very special about, being with another human being and learning about them and their family and, what they do and what have you, and finding commonality. But we did them as a point of necessity versus a point of love. My love is to travel around the country, around the world, and meet new clients, shake their hands, say thank you for your business, and learn about them, and build rapport, but build friends. A lot of my clients turn into my friends.
Sure.
So,
now, do you head up sales, or most of the outreach is done by yourself, or do you have a sales staff?
So a lot of the high touch, high end business to business sales is done by me. So I still make phone calls, and it's all mostly introductions. And that's probably where Estate Wine Brokers, which is our sister company, comes into play, because we have another company called Estate Wine Brokers that does very high end wine brokerage. It's an auction alternative. So there are great auction houses out there like Christie's, Sotheby's, my favorite one, Hart Davis Hart. And we have great relationships with auction houses. There are some that you want to stay away from. There's some that are fantastic, but at the end of the day, people who don't want to wait to sell their wine collection, or they want anonymity, or, it could be a touchy subject, death in a family, estate sale, whatever. So we basically buy and sell and trade wine collections from ultra high net worth individuals. And then what we do is we offer them to our clients on the other side. And those clients are buyers of fine wine. So it's very much like the art world, where people are buying, selling, and trading. And in particular, I got the idea in 2013 from a gentleman who's a billionaire. And he, I got the opportunity to meet him a few times and sit down with him one-on-one. Wonderful man. And he basically, he told me how he bought and sold and traded wine, and he had tens of millions of dollars worth of wine. So this guy was a very serious wine collector. And, I got to learn about the billionaire mentality. There's some of the most frugal individuals in the world, which is how they come to amass their fortunes. They're obviously innovators, and he taught me that, like, what his secret formula was, buy 12, sell 9, drink 3, and you're almost drinking for free.
That was the old sales pitch at the wine store I worked at.
Yeah. And it's, and it makes sense when you start thinking about it. And so that's how he could pull a bottle of Petrus out and drink it with a hamburger, so he would, and that's what he would do. And so I started to see that business, and I thought, wow, that's really interesting. Another reason why was, in 2008, right before the housing market crashed, I was just, I would get closeout lists from distributors where somebody just hand keyed the name of the wine wrong.
Uh-huh.
And I built a filter that would look at the data coming in, and I would tokenize keywords and look for wines that had been on closeout that may have been misspelled. And I started to buy really high-end wine for $20, $50 a bottle.
Nice.
So I had a whole room filled with wine, and it was kind of a hoarding thing, right? and finally, during the 2000, this is where I learned my first big lesson is, always proceed with caution in any market, especially extremely robust markets where anything can happen, right? Mm-hmm. COVID taught us a big lesson in supply chain issues. It taught us a big lesson in on-premise sales. It taught us many lessons, but the housing market taught us something really interesting too, which is, the super, super fine wine market is a relatively healthy market because of the scarcity of that wine. But mm-hmm. there is a no man's land of wine that is over $25 and under $100, where in substantial market recessions, those wines don't move very well through on-premise sales because people don't go to restaurants as much. Uh-huh. And so you have to start thinking about that kind of stuff. And so that industry produced substantial introductions to very high net worth individuals and business owners for personal wine. But it also opened the doors to us to we started, seeing buying opportunities then as well. So we had these wineries introduce us to other wineries because, at that time you were sending your wine to Wine Still Sold Out or Wine Woot or Last Bottle, any one of these, or Groupon, where your wine goes to die, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're basically cutting your price in half. Uh-huh. And we would say, stop sending it to them, send it to us. And and we'll sell it for, your tasting room price or, 20% more, whatever the number is, because we're going to engrave the bottle or custom label it, and we're going to put it into the hands of new clients. Mm. And so word got around that we were this very interesting marketing product launch pad for these, small boutique wineries that couldn't necessarily get their wines into, the distribution tier because it's expensive to do that. Mm-hmm. Unless you have marketing dollars that you're allocating or you're willing to provide rebates or whatever it is that you can do. Mm-hmm. So these wineries started to tell people about us, and that's how we started sourcing wine. We started buying wine, and then they started to come to us, and then we started to do our private label wine on top of that. Okay. By buying finished product, testing it, chemically.
Buying shiners without the labels, or
buying shiners without the labels, but also buying bulk wine, getting it tested.
Okay.
Yeah. Looking at the, volatile acidity, SO2 levels, and making sure that chemically it was sound, and then having it tested by, in a blind format, truly blind format, by advanced and master somms. And then just wine enthusiasts, we would invite people over and say, we would bag them up. They wouldn't know what they were, and we would try them. And then it's a score of 1 to 10. Mm-hmm. And anything below 8, we just don't bother. And anything at 10, we'll pay more for. And anything at 9, we'll pay, good money for. And anything at 8, we'll buy if the price is right. And so we started to do, that's really how we choose our wine.
That's great. So you're actually doing production and not just buying excess inventory.
Oh yeah.
When did you get into the production side?
The first vintage was 2007, which was
that was a while. Wow.
Yeah, it was, and we started buying wine in Napa. Got involved in it. Like I remember there's a master sommelier by the name of Sir Lucero, and this guy was he won the Crude Cup. So he literally passed his master somm test in the first go. This guy's a savant. And so he can smell the wine, tell you where it's from, what vintage, what varietal, with I mean, a fairly high degree of accuracy. And I've only met maybe three people in my whole life that could do that, that could actually tell you what it's from. I met one guy who could tell you what winery it was from. But that, I mean, these are people like Coco Chanel, people who have just an incredible factory sense. And I remember going into his house in Napa and, you know, him teaching me how 1% or 2% of another varietal blended in will change the wine fundamentally. So, you know, I got to understand that, you know, it's not easy to make wine. It's easy to ruin wine. And so, you know, we try to find finished wine, or we'll finish it with a vintner, an enologist, you know, somebody with advanced chemistry a degree, somebody with, you know, some credentials. And a lot of times we will sign NDAs that prevent us from telling you where it's from. So the private label wines that we carry, you know, a few of them they come from very high-end wineries, you know, cult wines. But we can never tell people where they come from, and we can't piggyback off their scores, you know, but that's okay.
Oh, that's good. I mean, the juice in the bottle, it tells the story. Yeah. I do have a lot of the higher end wineries, they make you change just a little bit. They have to add 2%, 3% from some other winery just so throws the Psalms off.
Yeah. Actually, what's interesting when you say that is that happened to me in a 2016 vintage from a wine in Napa. And in the agreement, it said, you have to blend 5% into this. And my response was, I am never going to tell anybody where this comes from, but I'm not going to take a perfect wine. Because this wine is perfect. I will not take perfection and take a chance on perfection. It's just, why would we do that? Like, how about I just filter it differently, you know, and change it from a texture perspective versus changing it from a nose and a taste perspective. I'd rather do that. So I would, you know, so I made it slightly more feminine in style versus rich and tannic. And it was just a beautiful, and the winemaker agreed. It was like, okay, that's okay. You know, because they trust us, because we don't tell people where we buy it from.
Yeah.
You can't, because if you do that, nobody in the Valley will ever sell to you again.
So much of this industry is built on trust.
Yeah. And that to me is, that's such a beautiful thing to me. I mean, everything today is contracts and DocuSign and lawyers and, you know, ironclad. And I mean, there's still so many people I buy wine from where I shake their hand, and I've been shaking their hand for over 10 years, in some cases 15 years. And, you know, and it's just, that's such a wonderful thing. It's just like, that's what my dad would say. That's how we used to do it in the old days. And you know, it's kind of a shame we can't do that now, you know.
In the industry, there's still, I mean, it's one of the last, I don't want to say that because I don't know all the industries, but it's been what I've loved about the industry for so long. Like, as soon as I have to sign an NDA, as soon as I have to sign a DocuSign, I start wondering with my clients, what am I getting myself into? Someone's already thinking about how they're going to get out of this. Whereas if you trust somebody and you shake their hand, there's a lot more weight in that, where you're actually going against yourself if you break it.
And that's why I like meeting people in person, because you can tell a lot about a person by their behavior. You can tell, you know, looking at them in the face, and, you know, how they get nervous in front of you or how they act in front of you and what have you. And so, you know, to me, it's just, that's the part I love the most. Is I'm not necessarily like looking at people and over analyzing them, but generally speaking, you know, everybody has a sense of whether somebody gives off a good vibe or a bad vibe. And, you know, vibes are a real thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, these stellar wines, not wrong word, but some of these awesome wines that you're sourcing that are going to be private labels. Now, do you have the select group of like corporate clients, like, go find me the 99-point wine, but don't tell me what it is? Or do you find the wine and then find the client to personalize it?
I have a few of them that are like that, but not many of them. Most of them, after they buy from you, because sometimes they'll buy 500 bottles of wine because they're giving it away as a gift with everything they sell, right? Mm-hmm. They want to make sure that what's in the bottle is representative of quality that they would want the other person to expect. But for the most part, we've been around for such a long time that people just know, who we are, what we have, just our repeat order rate. And
you're just sourcing a quality level, like they want to wine at this caliber.
Yeah, I just, if you think about it in another way, the easiest wine to source in less than, from an average perspective, right? If you start buying just super, super cheap crap wine,
because a lot of people think about that when I get a gift or something, automatically assuming that it's not going to be something I'm going to really want to drink. And that's a misconception that needs to be dispelled, because you're not providing that.
Well, that's our biggest hurdle. And after 22 years, it's our biggest hurdle. And it will probably still be a hurdle for a while, because we've become a very good company at telling the story and creating user engagement. We're supremely confident in our ability to create user engagement, especially with young people, the millennial wine drinkers, which are the fastest growing wine drinkers. They're less concerned about price. Certainly they are concerned about price, but they will pay a little bit extra if something has a story. They want to hear the story. And it doesn't need to be, this winery is 300 years old and these grapes are pre-phylloxera. There's a story of the people, there's the story of the place and the time. And so we've become really good at telling that story. But right from the very beginning, and this is, so I had another business partner, and that's where we really just couldn't work together. And it wasn't anything bad. It was just one of those things where, he did not want the phone number on the website. If you had a problem, you submitted a ticket, and it was just this is so impersonal that it completely goes against the core values and the mission of our business. The mission of our business is to provide the most impeccable product, to, the most, an impeccable product and an unbelievable experience to the most meticulous customer. And meticulous customers, they require an impression. And the impression is not just outside of the bottle, it's inside of the bottle. And if they're going to give it as a gift, that person's going to drink the wine. They want that person to go, wow, that's really amazing. And we want them to do that because they turn it over on the back label. It has, personalwine.com on it. We want them to go there and buy it for their people. So, so from the very beginning, we were very concerned about not just speed and usability on our website. We were very concerned about the quality of the labels, that we were the actual paper itself, the packaging itself. We were very concerned about the wine that was inside the bottle. Very concerned about that from the beginning.
Yeah, you would have success would have to be on it. So that's the biggest misconception that even I think sometimes that way. So I'm glad dispelling that. Shifting. When did spirits come into the equation? Was that early on, or was that?
No, it's very recent, and it's a work in progress. Spirits is very challenging because of the state regulations involved in shipping spirits. In fact, we do not ship any spirits in Texas today. We have a plan for that. It's in the very near horizon in Texas, but some states you can't ship out of the county lines. Some states you can ship inside your state. Some states you can ship out of states. Some states you can receive products from out of states.
It's so complicated.
So it's a complex web of taking all of these regulations and then building rules and relationships to accommodate that. So we service, a small market right now in terms of liquor, but liquor is different. Liquor is decentralized, and liquor involves partnerships with retailers that want to offer this as a service where we both get to share in the upside of that opportunity.
Okay.
And another thing is we don't label liquor. We just engrave the bottles because the labeling guidelines with regards to liquor is much different. Mm-hmm. So, that is our focus, is to continue to build technology that allows for, personal wine to become an adult beverage, not just wine, but adult beverage as a whole in totality, a gifting platform, product launch platform, mass customization platform for the adult beverage industry.
I love that. Personalization as a service. And talking about technology, so would you say your business is a wine and spirits company or a technology company?
Our business is a technology company that's focused in the alcohol and regulated market space.
That's a good way to say it.
Because behind our technology is not just fulfillment, it's rules, and it's automation of compliance systems. And those compliance systems have to follow rules that are ever changing.
Yeah.
So the rules change in counties, they change in states, they change, not so much at the federal level a lot, but they do. So we have to stay above that.
Yeah, no, compliance is a huge issue. So yeah, I like that you being a technology company focused in this regulated industry. Perfect description. Yeah. You definitely know your model. Now, here's a question for your customers. What's the biggest mistake you see businesses making in their personalization and what they're trying to do? Well,
in the customization side,
other than misspelling the name of their client,
that fortunately is not a big one, but just grammar. Thank you for your business. Is it abbreviated? Is it apostrophe? Blah blah blah. Is there a hyphen? And we do catch them, and we do send it to them and say, hey, did you really mean this? Because we don't want them to ship out 1,000 packages of something that has something wrong in it from a grammar perspective, because that's embarrassing.
Oh yeah.
But really, just the biggest misconception is going to be the rules associated with shipping and, ship to versus non-ship to states. Adult signatures is a huge problem because
a lot of education to the client side when they want to.
And they don't care about FedEx or UPS rules. They don't care. They don't care that there are rules behind it. So some people will say, I'm buying this for this event on this day, and we ship it and we get it there on time. And sometimes we get it there early, but it gets there and nobody's there to sign for it. And they call us up and say, this is your fault. It's like, no, it's not. We did exactly what you asked us to do, and we got it there exactly on the day that you got it there. And they're like, well, I want this thing to be delivered without a signature. And it's like, that's not going to happen ever. That's against the law, and we're not going to break the law for you.
Yeah.
But we can reroute it to a FedEx location where you can go pick it up at your convenience. So, and it requires a conversation where we don't make the customer feel bad about, that happening. We have to kind of walk them through and support them as if we're both in the same boat, because we really are. We want them to have that package. We do not want that wine to come back to us.
Sure. Yeah. And for sure, shipping that is a challenge, though, with giving gifts and alcohol. I was in preparation for our talk today. I was kind of thinking about this even back in the day when I sold wine. And for me, I was wondering, like, for me, just thinking about it, the biggest problem with personalization is there might be a disconnect, or there's so often a disconnect between the client and the company buying this gift to give out to their clients, and the product they chose. Like it may be a high-end client and they chose just the wrong type of wine. It's just not going to resonate with those people. It's going to fall on deaf ears.
We do have those conversations. Those are conversations that we have to have over the phone. They're not conversations that we have over email. There's a human being looks at every order that comes through online.
That's so important.
I mean, we look at every order, and if something does not look right, then we will take that order, we will hit the pause button, and we will quickly take it to customer service. Customer service will get on the phone with that client and talk to them about that. An example would be like half bottles. Somebody orders a half bottle. We do have them available online. It's not easy to find them because many, people will sometimes just buy the cheapest product. And if the cheapest product is a half bottle, you'd be confused that half bottle is not a full size bottle.
It's a full client appreciation, and they're only worth half a bottle.
You don't send somebody a half bottle of wine to say thank you, because that's like a half a thank you, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to call them and say, "Are you sure you didn't want to order a full size bottle? Because the order was a half bottle." And that's probably the greatest one that happens, is like in terms of frequency.
I was thinking about it. It's so good that you have a human that like kind of discusses their goals. What's the goal for this gift? What's the goal for this personalization? To make sure that what you're doing is actually going to resonate. Because at the end of the day, you're, like you said, your website's on the back. If the gift doesn't resonate, sometimes it comes back to you.
The goal is the reorder. You have to get that. The easiest client to sell to is the existing client. And if you lose a client, it's on you. Like 9 times out of 10, right?
Absolutely.
So we kill with kindness. And of everybody, I think everybody, especially this day and age where, things are heated up, everybody has a client that's a pain in the neck, I mean, especially when you're talking about affluent, high-end individuals who are like, I want it and I want it now. And, they start, and you're like, listen, we did everything as your order has been specified. And we are willing to do this to make it, right, to get it to you. But we want you to, you have to find a really delicate way of having them acknowledge that they own responsibility in the outcome, right? And that's very delicate because most people just don't want to be responsible for a negative situation.
Yeah, no, there's one out.
So exactly,
someone else's problem.
It's everybody would love to blame everything on everybody else, and we have a system of accountability in our own company where if something negative happens, you own the experience, and don't be afraid to own the experience and vocalize that so that everybody learns how we can be on the watch, how we can look after each other.
Oh, for sure.
One of our KPIs is helping another person in another department. That's one. Everybody has the same thing. Who did you help last week in another department? And you have to be specific about how you help them.
I like that one. That's a good one. Before we wrap up, and I do want to ask this. So you've had such tremendous growth. You recently branched out into spirits. Over the last 20 years, if you could do anything, what would you have done differently?
There's a couple things I would have done differently. First off, I'm going to just give you 3, just because I think number 1 is don't lose focus of what made you great in the first place. Everybody has just this desire to make tons of money, and then they start seeing shiny objects from a business perspective. Always remember, what your focus is and where your strength is, and try to tap as much value there as you can before you start looking at other things. And number 2 is don't be afraid to use data to make your business great. Even when it comes to hiring people, we use personality profile tests to try to build the best culture in our company, because culture is a really important facet
Yes.
It was important even before, all the cultural issues that exist today. It was always important. When you have a harmonious workforce of highly accountable individuals who are accountable to each other, it's a rising tide that lifts all ships. So don't be afraid to use data to help support, how you hire and how you build companies. And that sometimes requires you to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And number 3 is there's always going to be something that you don't know, right? So anybody who is in a position of power inside a company, their whole goal should be to be the dumbest guy or girl in the room and not get kicked out. And it will usually work out for them. Everybody's trying to hold on to power and assert power and have control for many different reasons, for ego and what have you. If you let go of your ego and you show the human side of yourself, your weaknesses and your strengths, then you're going to be more able to bring people into your team that can help complement the strengths and the weaknesses so that what you build becomes better for everybody. Because everybody wants to make more money and everybody wants to have a great job and everybody wants to feel accomplished. Everybody wants that. And if you have a company where, the smartest guy or girl in the room and nobody else is right, then, it's usually, I haven't seen those end very well. It lasts for so long and then it just fizzles out. So
that's great advice. So Alex, how do you stay motivated? 20 years in personalized wine, 20 plus years.
Yeah, almost. 23 basically, almost, right? How do I stay motivated? I pick, anywhere between 1 and 3 challenges every quarter. And I go after them really hard and I don't let anybody, I don't take distractions. And, I've had many people tell me that's not possible or no way. I generally speaking, I'll listen to the why they're saying that, but I still don't believe that that they really know. Right. And so how do I stay motivated? I stay motivated by taking the maybes and turning them into yeses. And the absolute big win is when you take a no and you turn it into a yes.
Absolutely.
And and people will tell you, they're like, you did a good job. You were really persistent, just being persistent, being motivated by taking challenges and turning them from maybes and no's into yeses is what motivates me.
Oh yeah. That is some great advice. Absolutely great advice. So Alex, where can people find out more about you, Personal Wine Brokers? And you also have a book that people should check out, a wine investment book.
Yes. So I wrote a book on investing in fine wine. We are writing another one, which is certainly going to have more actual factual data in it. The first one is more of a how-to guide. And of course it markets us because, that's what books do. Yep. But it also markets other brokers that we feel are good in the industry. And what we plan to do is just to continue with that and speak less about us and more about processes, factual data, historicals, to give people, more of a financial data set than an about us side. So we're going to be improving on the book and continuously improving on the book, investing in fine wine, which you can buy on Amazon. It's 99 cents for the Kindle version. If you email us, then we'll just send you one for free. So it's not designed to make money. And then we have estate wine brokers where you can buy, sell, and trade high-end wine. You can get valuations. There are some caveats to that, but we're always interested in buying, selling, and trading fine wine on estatewinebrokers.com. And then the big one is personalwine.com. That's WINE.com. So PERSONALWINE.com, personalwine.com.
That sounds like a fantastic operation. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Drew. I appreciate the time and look forward to another time.
Oh, anytime. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.